So what's the difference between high pressure tanks and bulk CO2 tanks, or the larger tanks that you see for a soda machine, so to say, and a regular high pressure tank? Well, the difference really is this. The pressure is number one. The CO2 tanks that are the high pressure tanks, those are sitting at room temperature. Because it's hotter, the CO2 is at a higher pressure than it normally is inside a bulk tank. Now, those ones sit at about 800 to 850, 900 PSI, depending on the ambient temperature outside. The hotter the temperature, the higher the pressure, the less liquid and the more gas. Reverse that. When you get a colder temperature, you're gonna have a little bit more liquid, you're gonna have less gas, but it's gonna be at a lower temperature. Case in point, the bulk tanks, or the larger 160 liter, 180 liter, the tanks that people say they see on soda machines, those ones actually put out about 100 to 120 PSI. Some are a little bit different than that. So those really aren't the ones that are used for special effects purposes. But the special effects purposes ones, those ones are specifically designed to allow up to 350, sometimes 450 or 550 PSI for the very high pressure bulk type of tanks, which is the technical term for that. Now those ones, the CO2 sits in an inside capsule, if you will, between a layer of vacuum jacketed insulation, which means there's negative pressure that insulates it from the outside air. Because of that, the CO2 sits inside at a colder temperature. Temperatures vary, again, depending on many different factors, the gas that's in it. If we're talking about CO2, probably around -35, -40 degrees or colder, depending. Don't quote me on that, but this just gives you a general idea for the example here. Now, because of that colder temperature, remember what I said earlier, the gas comes out at a lower pressure. So the bulk tanks, or doer tanks as people call them, the gas is going to come out at about 300, 350 PSI, as opposed to the high pressure tanks where the gas comes out at about 800, 850 PSI. So that's the main difference between those two tanks. This is CryoFX, and that should answer that question. Thank you and welcome to CryoFX.